All right, folks, if you got this far, congratulations. Now I'm going to take you through the next step in the process based on what I have written down. Obviously, reading the material is one thing, but actually going through the motions of the material is another thing. So hopefully this video will help you and guide you through the way. So as I stated before, the first thing that you're going to do is obtain a list of for sale owners. You're going to find that list in several different locations through Craigslist, Zillow, Trulia, maybe even, well, probably not Realtor.com, but stick to those first two, as well as drive-bys. When you're scouting out a certain area, what I always used to do is drive through neighborhoods that I wanted to prospect, and every time I saw a for sale by owner sign, I jotted down their name and number. Then I would go back to my home office, make the phone call and set up the appointment. Nowadays with technology, you got phones that have cameras on them, so just snap a shot of the picture of the sign and you got your phone number, you move on to the next one. Okay, so now that you have your list, now ideally what I used to do when I first started out, I would on a Sunday evening between 6 and 8:30, I would start calling these folks. Back in the day, I'm showing my age again, we had this thing called the newspaper, and it had wanted ads in the back in the real estate section, okay? And so I would just go down my list of areas of interest, and I would start calling on them. Well, now we have the internet, and you have the capabilities of getting for sale by owners in a whole different way. So now that you have your list, you start going through the list, and you're going to call each and every one of these. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to just get used to the script that you're going to say, so it just comes so natural. Because if you start sounding canned and stuff like that, it's not going to set very well, and they're going to know that you're obviously not qualified to even talk on the phone. So basically, here's how it goes. So the first step, ring ring. The seller's going to say hello, and then you go ahead and you introduce yourself. Basically what I would do is like, hey, this is Jim, and I was calling to see if your home was still available. And they're going to respond one of two ways, yes or no. They respond yes, great. Like I said, my name is Jim, I'm with ABC Realty, and I was calling to see if you'd be willing to work with me if I had a qualified buyer for you. Now, the next thing they're probably going to say is, oh, do you have a buyer for my home? And then you would respond with, I don't know, I haven't seen your home yet, but that's why I was calling. I'm working with a couple out of Plano, Texas, and they're looking to move into this area, and so I'm helping doing some legwork and locating some properties for them to view when they come into town. And then you pause and you wait to see what their reaction is. Usually they're going to say, okay. So at that time, you're going to go ahead and move forward and say, well, what works best for you? Would 6 be good or 7 be better this evening? If you can book them during the day, that's great too. There's a lot more people, I think, working from their home office nowadays, and you can catch them during the day, which is awesome, because a lot of times I would have to end up just doing the evening appointments. So that's one scenario. So I'm going to take you through another scenario. So the phone rings, they say hello, and you say, hey, this is Jim. Is your home still available? And they say yes, and then you introduce yourself and say, hey, I'm with ABC Realty, and I wanted to know if you'd be willing to work with me if I had a buyer for you. Another response they might come back with is, I'm not interested in listing the property with any realtors right now, thank you. And you might just get hung up on, and that's just the way it goes. And if that's the case, just chalk it up as them having a bad day and move on to the next one. But let's say they stay on the phone long enough for you to have a conversation back with them. So once they say, hey, I'm not interested in listing right now, then you immediately say, no, that isn't the reason why I'm calling. And then they're going to respond back with, oh, well, why are you calling? Well, the reason why I called is I'm working with a couple out of Plano, Texas that are moving into this area, and I'm looking for some properties for them. And we don't have a whole lot of inventory to show them right now, so I'm reaching out to for sale by owners like yourself and seeing if you'd be willing to work with me if I had a qualified buyer for you. Now, the next thing they might say is, yeah, sure. Or they might even go into having a conversation about, well, how much is your commission, this and that. Don't get into numbers with them over the phone. Just say, that's all negotiable. But if we can come to terms with something realistic, would it be something you could work with me on? And just get a yes out of them. If it's a no, then move on to the next one. You don't want to spend a whole lot of time trying to convince somebody to sell their house to you, for crying out loud. Okay? So now you got the appointment. Okay? Now you pencil it in, and then you go to the next one, and then the next one, and the next one, until what I would do is I get about 3 or 4 of them lined up in the same vicinity within 5-10 minute ratio of each other, because you're going to drive to each one of these. Then you want to allow yourself about a 30-minute window in between each appointment, because some of these appointments may run over. Some of them may take shorter amount of time. You just never know. So once you've gotten to that point and you've booked them all, now that day that you're going out, you would call each one of these and confirm. Hey, Sally Smith, this is Jim with ABC Realty. I just want to confirm our appointment at 6:30. Okay, I'll see you then. Hey, Mr. Jones, this is Jim with ABC Realty. I was calling to make sure that our appointment's still scheduled for 7:30. Okay, see you then. So you get the idea. So the first thing you do, you want to make sure you have the proper tools with you when you go out to preview this property. Now keep in mind, this is very important, do not ever bring up listing the property with them, because if you're going there under false pretense, you're going to fall flat on your face. Okay, so be very careful. Okay, and never bring it up. Now if they bring it up, then that's a good thing, and then that's when you can start talking about your services. But I'll get into that a little bit later as an example. So make sure you have contracts with you, listing contracts with you. Make sure you bring a comparable market analysis of that property. Each and every property that you're going on that day, you're going to have a copy of each one of those. And get a professional one. If you're not sure how to do that, hopefully you have a good broker that'll show you how to get it off of your multiple listing service. Now, obviously a pen, something to write on. Nowadays everybody's using their phone as a notepad. That's fine too. Make sure you have a phone with a camera on it. I'm assuming everybody does, but for this training segment, I want to make sure that you are very crystal clear about having the proper tools when you go out to the property. Now, when you go out to the property, knock at the door. The first thing you're going to do is greet yourself, shake their hand, say their name, and you're going to pay them a compliment. You don't necessarily have to pay them a compliment directly, and again, you don't want to come across as some phony or canned. So what I've done sometimes is like, wow, I really like the way you got your house dressed up, or I really like how you got your landscape out here. That's really nice. And then, let them proceed in showing you the property. Basically, they're going to probably say, okay, well, where do you want to start? And you take your shoes off. That's respect, okay? Always take your shoes off the door, even if they say no. That's okay. You just go ahead and do it without question, okay? It just shows a sign of respect to their home. And you're trying to win these people over, okay? So show your respect to them. Secondly, what you want to do is ask them permission. Is it all right if I take some photos while I'm here of your property? And of course they're going to say sure. And then you go on to ask them, do you have a flyer about your property? And then hopefully they do. But there's going to be a series of questions you're going to be asking these folks, and it's going to plug in some curiosity for them, or maybe they would get thinking about, gosh, I never thought about that, and so it's going to trigger them to think, maybe I'm not qualified for this job, So like I said in the written the written text information that I gave you, don't interrogate these people, okay? You don't want to come across like an interrogator, but there is a lot of questions that you got to ask and get the answers to. And you want to write these down for future reference. So it's very important to do that. So the next thing you would do is let them take you through the home. You're taking photos. And as you're going through the property, you're going to be asking them some questions. One question is, hey, if my buyer was interested in this property, how soon could you move out? Okay. Now, these are questions that I have written down, and they're not in any particular order, okay? But they're all questions that need to be asked and get answers to before you leave that appointment, okay? Next question is, why are you moving? Where are you moving to? Oh, okay. And so you're trying to get the sense of what their situation is. Maybe they got a job transfer. Oh, well, maybe we just, we want to get a bigger home. So some of those reasons for moving may not be a motivator, okay? So that's important to jot those pieces of information down, okay? Now you're going to ask general questions about the property too. If they have a flyer of information, then you got pretty much all that property information questions out of the way, okay? So another question you might ask is, do you have a copy of your seller's disclosure statement? Now that is a statement where in most states that sellers, not necessarily are required, but it's a safety net for sellers to jot down information they know or don't know about the property so they can provide it and give full disclosure. Another piece of information they may not have thought of that's going to trigger them to think, gosh, maybe I am not qualified for this job. So you're going through everything and you're continuing asking questions, and you'll ask them, just out of curiosity, where did you come up with your price? Now when you say it in that way, they won't get defensive like, well, how dare you tell me, you know, what I should price my home at. So this way is the best way to just come across and say, hey, just out of curiosity, where did you arrive at your price? And then they'll tell you, they might say, well, you know, this is what we need. Or, hey, you know, my neighbor's a realtor and she ran some comps for me and this is where they thought it should be priced at. You know, whatever the answer is, just jot that information down and keep it for future reference. Again, never bring up listing the property. Now, if they go into start asking questions like, well, you know, what kind of services do you provide? And, you know, I'm thinking about listing the property. What do you think I should do to this bedroom? Should I paint it? You know, when they start asking you questions like that, then I immediately go into a different mode and I say, oh, are you hiring me for the job? And I'm just blatantly say, hey, are you hiring me for the job? Because that's part of my services that I provide. You don't want to give them a bunch of information for free. I mean, you've earned your education through your hard knocks of school. So that would be a trigger point for them to break into a possible, let's talk about listing the property mode. But again, if they don't bring it up, you don't bring it up. You don't want to go in there under false pretense. Now, the next thing is you've gotten through all your list of questions and answers, and then you're going to say, well, I appreciate you taking the time out. Oh, by the way, here's a copy of a comparable market analysis I printed up for you. I took the liberty to print up for you. I just wanted to share that with you so you know what's going on in your neighborhood or your area and what properties are on the market, which ones you're competing with. And you say, you know, here, this is for you, and I'll be in touch with you. I got to follow up with my clients and see when they would be coming into town, take a look at the property, and then I'll get back with you. If your situation changes in the meantime, by all means, please call me if you get the property under contract. You know, just give me a heads up so I don't, you know, keep this as one of the properties for them to see. And you shake you shake their hand and you thank them, and then you exit out the door. And then you're off to your next one. Now, once you get back to the office of all these appointments, you're immediately going to sit down at your desk and you're going to print out letters. Okay, you can print them out on your computer, handwritten signature. You want to date them, and I'll have a copy of an example letter for you to put out. You'll hand address it, no return address, and you'll put a first class stamp. Now the reason for that is you don't want them to not open your mail. If they see something with the real estate company's name on the return address, chances are good they're going to trash it. Keep in mind, you're not the only real estate agent out there. They're getting solicited by so many people, so you got to stand out of the crowd and get noticed. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. That's basically it as far as that goes. Now we will have a segment that we will do a one-on-one dialogue script, and that's something that I'll do with you over the phone as part of the deal, and I want you to be successful. Now let's take a step back and give you another scenario. Let's say the seller, because at some point too in the conversation you're going to ask them, I was just curious, why are you guys selling on your own? Why haven't you hired a professional? I'm just curious. And they're going to say one or three things. One, well, we just think we can do it ourselves. Two, well, we've sold properties before by ourselves without a realtor, so we don't need that service. Or three, they might say, you know what, we just can't afford it. We don't have enough equity in the home to afford real estate expense. And you always want to agree with them. You want to say, yeah, I understand, I get that. I guess I would do the same thing too if I were in your shoes. At least give it a shot, right? Save yourself some money. Well, so when they come into that conversation about not having enough equity in the home, here's where we come in. As a real estate investment company, we buy properties several different ways, and we can buy properties regardless of whether they have equity in them or not. Now, here is the key factor here. All you have to do is tell them, well, I'm not sure if this is going to work for you or not, and I can't make any promises, but what if I could put you in touch with somebody that could get you what you needed without bearing the cost? Would that be of any value to you? And of course they're going to say yes. Okay? You say, well, I have plenty of resources, and I have an investment company located out of Michigan, and they service all 50 states. And they get very creative in purchasing properties at fair market value. And I think they will be a good fit for your situation if you're not successful in selling it on your own. If you don't mind, I can put them in touch with you. Would that be all right? You always get permission. And they're going to say, yeah, sure. So then you pin down, well, what's the best times for them to call you? And then obviously you want to give them my name. Well, Jim will be the contact that will be reaching out to you, and I'll let him know a little bit about your property and what your situation is, and then hopefully he can sit down and talk to you about, or over the phone, about your situation and see what he can do to help sell your property. Okay, so that's a win-win for everybody. Sure, you may not have got the listing, but you never would have gotten it anyway because that commission got in the way. That's the problem that a lot of real estate agents have, just like myself. When I was a real estate broker for 20 years, I was in the business for over 20 years, and I had a brokerage firm, and I had about 35 agents at one time. Not a whole lot, it's not a big office, but we did our thing. And but from time to time we would run into that commission issue, and so they're just going to do it on their own, or they're not going to do it at all. And so rather than leave money on the table, why don't you refer them out to another source of value, which is us? Now what's going to happen is, let's say we call Sally Smith, we strike up a deal with her, okay, and we do the deal. We're going to pay you a referral for that, okay? You sent us a piece of business that we would have never gotten otherwise. That's a value. We're going to pay you a referral on that. Now, we're not sure how much it is because it depends on what we're able to do with the property. There's a lot of different things that we can do with the property, depending on the seller's situation. I won't go into all that with you right now, but there's several different ways that we can make money off a property even without equity, believe it or not, which is pretty awesome. I'm pretty jacked up about that. So anyway, that's basically how you do it. Now, once you've done this, you're going to repeat it again and again and again and again. Before you know it, you're going to know every for sale by owner out there by heart. So anytime that you come into contact with a potential buyer, you're going to know, hey, wait a minute, Sally Smith's property down the street at Elms Lane really fits the profile which you guys are looking for. Let me give her a call and see if I can get you an appointment. So then you're continuing to build rapport with these for sale owners. See, when I first started out, I didn't have the inventory, so I had to try to sell, in-house listings, which is fine, that's awesome. But how about selling a for sale by owner and negotiating your own commission? Sure, you may not get 7%. You might get, but you might get more than 3. You can say, hey, I'm doing both sides of the table here, so try to negotiate where you get 4 or 5. If the seller's going to buy another property in the area that you service, you can entice them to work with you and you can lower their commission. Now that's a whole nother segment, but that's what I call leverage. You can leverage a deal where you can get more business on the backside. I've done that several different times, and I've turned a seller into a buyer, which is awesome. They got to buy from somebody. Unless they already have a contract on a property with another real estate agent, they're fair game. They're fair game. So keep that in mind. I mean, there's just a lot of information, and I'm just scratching the surface, but I know this is going to be helpful for you. And just stay plugged into the system of what I have here. It's of great value. When I did this, I was working for a company, that was taking half of my paycheck from me. Okay, so and I was in unmarked territory. I was new to the area. I didn't even know how to spell some of the names of the counties that we resided in, and it was a challenge. And I didn't know anybody. Okay, so. Unfamiliar territory, so you couldn't work your sphere of influence, which is your friends and family and people you grew up with. So I had to build rapport with people that were complete strangers, and this is the best way to do it. So once you've run out of out of friends and family, you can use this concept no matter where you are in the country or in the world for that matter. So real estate is real estate no matter how you dice it and slice it. So again, I hope you find it helpful, and I will be back with you very soon. Obviously, if you have any questions, you got my name and number down below. Give me a call. I'll be more than happy to walk you through any objections or questions or anything else that you may have inquiries about. Thank you so much. Bye.